I had just sold my company for $60 million. To celebrate, I took my daughter Emily and her husband Ryan to the most expensive restaurant in the city. I stepped away to confirm the wire transfer, and when I turned back, a young waiter blocked my path, his hands shaking. "Mr. Shaw," he whispered, "I saw your daughter. When your husband distracted you, she poured a powder into your wine." My blood ran cold, but I stayed calm. I walked back, knocked over a water glass on purpose, and in the chaos, switched my glass with hers. 15 minutes later, her eyes rolled back and she collapsed. "My name is Peter Shaw. I'm 68 years old, and 3 years ago, I lost my wife Laura. That 60 million wasn't just a number. It was 40 years of my life, starting in a rented garage with 2 employees and a dream. Despite the money, I never changed. Same house, same 7-year-old sedan. Laura was the one who saw people clearly. She never trusted Ryan. He only looks at your checkbook, Peter, she used to tell me. He doesn't see Emily. He sees a safety net." I laughed it off. I told her he loved our daughter. I was wrong. After Laura died, Emily grew distant, and Ryan's vague import-export business always seemed to be drowning in debt. I'd seen the collection letters delivered to my house by mistake, but the moment word leaked that my company was being acquired, they were suddenly everywhere. "Dad, let us help with your paperwork. Are you sure your investments are set up right?" I was lonely. I mistook their greed for love. Tonight, at l'Orangerie, that love felt like a trap. Crystal, white linen, a view of the whole city. Ryan raised his glass. To the man who built it all from nothing. Emily's smile was blinding. But their eyes weren't proud. They were hungry. Ryan asked a strange question that night. What happens to all the shipping infrastructure once the sale goes through? The climate-controlled containers, the routes. I run a biotech company. We ship regulated medical compounds. It's not sneakers. I brushed it off. Then my phone rang. The wire had cleared. I excused myself to take the call, and that's when the young waiter found me. His name was Evan. 24, terrified, hands trembling around an empty tray. Your son-in-law pointed at a painting, asked your daughter a loud question. It felt staged, like he wanted you both looking away. The moment you did, she took a small brown vial from her purse and dumped a white powder into your wine. She swirled it once and put the vial away. A powder, not a liquid, something clinical. I asked if he was certain. He swore he was. I handed him $500 and my private card. "You saw nothing, but if you're ever in trouble, call me." Then I composed my face and walked back to the table. I didn't drink from my glass. I remembered things I'd dismissed. Emily telling me I'd missed a dinner they'd actually canceled. Ryan asking if I was confused about managing money alone. It clicked. This wasn't poison to kill me. It was designed to mimic a stroke, sudden confusion, apparent senility. Right after I'd secured $60 million, they wanted me declared incompetent. I needed to switch the glasses back, properly this time, in front of witnesses. When a waiter came to refill water, I let my elbow accidentally knock Ryan's glass into the tablecloth. In the 5 seconds of chaos, I swapped our glasses again, this time reversing what I'd done in the bathroom earlier, so Emily's glass, the tainted one, ended up in front of her. I apologized for my clumsiness. Ryan and Emily shared a triumphant look. They thought my fumbling was the drug taking hold. I raised a toast. To family, and to getting everything you deserve. Emily drank deeply from what she believed was my ruined mind. 15 minutes later, she was slurring, dizzy, complaining the lights were too bright. Ryan told her to stop playing, then she seized and collapsed. He froze, not in grief, but in the raw panic of a man watching his plan implode. When I shouted for someone to call 911, Ryan insisted she was fine, that she mixed anxiety medication with wine, and tried to drag her toward the door, away from real doctors, toward his own. Evan stepped in, phone already at his ear. "I've already called 911, sir. They said not to move her." Ryan turned on him, with murder in his eyes. The restaurant manager stepped between them. Ryan's charming mask was gone. Staring at the spilled water, my sudden clumsiness, he understood I'd done something. He just didn't know what. At St. Jude's, Ryan told the intake nurse it was a shellfish allergy. Dr. Chen, young but sharp, wasn't fooled. No swelling, no rash, pinpoint pupils. This wasn't anaphylaxis. It was a severe overdose. Ryan tried to block the toxicology screen. Chen threatened to have him removed. I played my part, the frightened, pleading father, and Chen ran the full panel. In the waiting room, Ryan paced, whispering into his phone, mouthing a name, Reed. He was trying to get his own doctor there before the real results came back. Too late. I sat with the memory of Laura's warnings, and with something else, an email I'd stumbled across a week earlier on Emily's laptop. Subject line, the Shaw contingency. I'd assumed it was about a surprise party. I'd been a fool. An hour later, Dr. Chen returned, grim. Your daughter has a massive, near-lethal dose of olanzapine in her system. An antipsychotic, not anxiety medication, not something anyone mixes with wine by accident. A dose that high doesn't just cause seizures, he explained. It mimics rapid-onset dementia, confusion, slurred speech, psychosis, symptoms that look exactly like a stroke. That was the final piece. This wasn't about hurting me. It was about erasing me, legally, permanently, so they could take control of the money and put me in a home to rot. Ryan, hearing his own weapon described back to him by a doctor, went pale as a corpse. I played the broken father a while longer, drawing out of him the name Dr. Reed and the detail that the hearing was in 5 hours. Then I excused myself, hid near the vending machines, and listened as Ryan called Reed and screamed into the phone. She drank it! He's here! They ran a tox screen. They know it's olanzapine. This is falling apart. How are we supposed to get a conservatorship over him if he's the picture of health and she's the one in the psych ward? A gambling debt, a hearing at 8 a.m. He turned and saw me standing there and nearly had a heart attack, then spun a new lie. Emily was unstable, maybe suicidal, maybe it was the stress of all this new money. He sent me home in a cab, relieved to be rid of me. The second I was outside, the trembling stopped. I redirected the cab to Emily and Ryan's house first. I knew where the spare key was hidden. Her laptop had no password. I searched one word, Reed. The email chain unraveled everything. Ryan to Reed. He's becoming a problem. We need to accelerate the timeline. Reed to Ryan. I've prescribed the olanzapine under a false name. The dosage will induce acute psychosis within 20 minutes. Emily to both of them. I'll do it at the celebration dinner. He trusts me. Once he's at the hospital, Reed, you take over. And a final attachment from a law firm. An emergency conservatorship petition. Hearing set for 8 a.m. Built entirely on Dr. Reed's sworn testimony that I was senile. I called my lawyer, Harrison Wright, at 4 in the morning. He didn't ask why. He told me to come in. I laid it all out for him, cold, chronological, complete. The switched glasses, the tox screen, the overheard call, the emails. I placed the vial, still holding a few grains of powder, on his desk. Wright's expression cracked into a slow, dangerous smile. Peter, you old fox. Then I told him the part I'd only just understood myself. Ryan's endless questions about my shipping routes, my customs clearance, whether containers ever just went missing, my legitimate, federally monitored logistics network. A $60 million acquisition triggers a mandatory full audit. Every account, every manifest, 5 years back. Ryan hadn't been trying to steal my money. He'd been trying to stop that audit from ever happening, because he'd been smuggling something through my company's clean shipping lanes. Wright's investigator confirmed it within the hour. Dr. Reed owed $310,000 to an offshore sportsbook, owned by a shell corporation called RF Imports, Ryan Ford Imports. Reed wasn't a co-conspirator. He was collateral. At 6, Ryan called. I answered as the frightened, wandering old man he expected, hiding in a diner, unable to face the house. He told me Emily's doctor was worried about me too, that these conditions could be genetic, that Dr. Reed was coming to my house for a wellness check. He was moving the trap from the hospital to my living room. I gave him exactly the unraveling performance his petition needed, then agreed to go home and wait. Wright's plan was simpler. Let them go. Let Reed ring an empty doorbell for an hour. We had a hearing to get to, early. By 7:45 we were outside courtroom 3B. watching through the glass. Ryan paced in a suit I'd probably paid for, gray-faced, gambling everything on one final lie. Dr. Reed sat rigid on a bench, sweating through his shirt. I heard Ryan whisper to his lawyer, gloating that I hadn't shown, that I was probably wandering the freeway, proof enough for the judge to grant the petition outright. At 8, the judge called the hearing to order. Ryan's lawyer painted a devastating picture. A violent, paranoid old man who'd attacked his own daughter and vanished into the night, a family desperate to protect him from himself. Then Wright pushed the doors open. I walked in wearing the suit I'd bought for the acquisition party. Hair combed, mind a steel trap. Ryan's face went the color of old candle wax. Dr. Reed made a small, strangled sound and shrank into his seat. Wright introduced himself as my counsel and informed the court that I was, in fact, present, sane, and the victim of a criminal conspiracy. Ryan's lawyer stammered, then tried to spin my arrival as further proof of instability, and called Dr. Reed to testify. Reed took the stand shaking, and under Jennings' questioning, delivered the script Ryan had paid for. Rapid dementia, dangerous confusion, incapable of managing his own affairs. Then Wright stood. He established, calmly, that Reed wasn't my real doctor. My actual physician of 20 years had cleared me as perfectly healthy 3 months earlier. He pinned down Reed's claim that he'd examined me this morning, at the exact hour I'd been sitting in Wright's office. Reed floundered. Then Wright produced the bank statement. An offshore account, bi-weekly payments from a shell company called RF Imports, $310,000, tied to an online sports book. Reed shattered on the stand. He owned my debt. He said he'd ruin me. He gave me the vial. He told me what to say. It was all him. Ryan lunged out of his chair, screaming that I was the violent one, that I'd poisoned my own daughter, demanding I be arrested. The judge slammed his gavel for order, then turned to me and asked if I had anything to say. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and told the room the truth in full, that Emily had drugged my wine, that she'd made one fatal mistake and drunk from the wrong glass, and that none of it had ever really been about the 60 million. It had been about the audit that Sale would trigger, and the smuggling operation Ryan had been running through my company's shipping lanes for months. His endless questions about my routes and customs clearance hadn't been curiosity, they'd been reconnaissance. Ryan broke completely, vaulting the table and lunging for my throat, screaming. 2 federal agents who'd been sitting quietly in the gallery, contacted by Wright hours earlier, tackled him to the floor and cuffed him. Ryan Ford, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, interstate smuggling, and bribery of a medical official. I watched them drag him out. I looked at Reed, sobbing, ruined. I looked at Wright, calmly closing his briefcase. The war was over, but it wasn't finished. I drove straight to St. Jude's, to the psychiatric floor where Emily was recovering. She was pale, hollow, watching the news coverage of Ryan's arrest with tears streaming down her face, and even then, her first instinct was to play the victim. Dad, I didn't know he was doing any of that. You knew about the rest, I told her. You knew you were drugging me. You knew about the hearing. You knew Reed was a fraud. You chose him, Emily. I spent 40 years building a life for you. He spent 6 months whispering in your ear, and you chose the money. She had no answer. When the reality of prison hit her, she broke down, terrified. I told her she wouldn't go to jail. I'd pay for the best legal defense in the country, and the best rehabilitation program money could buy, not for addiction, but for character. Hope flickered in her eyes. Then I told her the rest. The 60 million was in a trust. I was the sole administrator. She would never see a cent of it. No allowance, no credit card, no safety net. She would work a minimum wage job and learn, for the first time in her life, what it meant to earn something. 6 months later, I was home in Laura's old armchair when the doorbell rang. It was Evan, no longer a waiter, now in a sharp suit, my newly hired financial manager, worth every cent of his salary. He handed me the week's reports. The foundation I'd funded was stable, and the shelter, built with the first 5 million from my settlement, had its first staff report in. Emily had completed her first full week, night shift, sanitation, thorough if slow. Good, I said, looking out at the old oak tree Laura and I had planted 40 years ago, its leaves just starting to turn gold. That's good. I was finally, truly at peace.